So, I was 15 swinging on a swing, tossing a plum pit, and it hit the emperor. If I weren't ridiculously good-looking, that would have been a horror story. But apparently luck and looks turned it into a romance. Welcome to my chaotic life as the emperor's favorite consort. When I was 15, I casually tossed away a plum pit. It just so happened to hit the emperor on the head. If I weren't good-looking, this would be a horror story. But I am very good-looking. So it turned into a love story. 4 o'clock. The emperor gets up. He went to bed a bit late last night, so he's in a bad mood today. While the newly arrived palace maid was helping him dress, she dropped a jade pendant and was dragged out to receive 20 strokes of the board. I was lying on the bed in the inner chamber and had meant to get up and speak on her behalf. But the moment I heard the maid cry out in a soft, coquettish voice, "Your Majesty, please forgive me," I closed my eyes again. Soon after, that same soft and coquettish voice turned into wails like ghosts crying and wolves howling. There are always some brave souls who think they can attract the emperor's attention by saying, in effect, "Look, I can't even do my own job properly. Don't I seem cute and endearing?" Luckily for her, she made her move in the sleeping quarters and not the imperial study. If she'd deliberately spilled a cup of tea over a stack of memorials or something like that, she'd already be dead by now. Honestly, she would have been better off giving me the 10 taels of gold she'd prepared to bribe the chief eunuch. This consort here could have arranged a professional skills enhancement program for outstanding women of the inner palace for her. After changing his clothes, the emperor came back into the inner chamber. He cupped my face with his so-called dragon claws and kissed me, reluctant to let go. Then he instructed everyone not to disturb my rest. Ha! Even a pig would have been woken up by now. Pretending to sleep really does take a bit of a guilty conscience. But if I didn't get up later than the emperor, how else could I fully demonstrate my status as the most favored noble consort in the entire harem? I kept pretending and ended up actually falling asleep. After all, last night really was exhausting. Full marks for the emperor's stamina. 5:15. I get up and do my hair. I've always preferred to keep things simple. I do my hair but don't bother with makeup. After washing up, a hairstyle is enough. The emperor knows absolutely nothing about the art of cosmetics. He often praises me for being clever and skillful, saying my makeup always looks especially good. As if there's really something you can put on your face that's waterproof, kissproof, and sleepproof all at once. Of course, I have no intention of telling him the truth. Watching the countless concubines in the harem draw their brows and paint their faces every day just for him gives the emperor a certain psychological satisfaction. Naturally, when he kisses someone and ends up with a mouthful of powder, he can't help but question his entire existence. So a few days ago, Lingzhou sent a tribute of 10 boxes of jade hairpin-scented face powder. With a wave of his hand, the emperor ordered all of them sent to my Yaohua palace. Clearly, he felt the other palaces already had more than enough face powder. Otherwise, they wouldn't be slathering so much of it on their faces. That day, many palaces accidentally broke teapots, vases, and the like. In a moment of impulse, Consort Feng smashed her most expensive jade bracelet. She regretted it immediately afterward and was so angry she didn't even eat dinner. I used my fingernail to scoop a little powder and applied it to the back of my hand. Worthy of its price, 5,000 taels of silver per box. The effect was instant. The skin tone there immediately dulled by several shades. Trash product. Not even as fair as my natural skin. 5:59. Paying respects to the Empress Dowager. Li Xiurong and Zheng Chongyuan had already arrived at Shokong Palace. They were chatting animatedly, joking and laughing to amuse her, along with several low-ranking concubines serving tea or fanning her. They surrounded the Empress Dowager so tightly it looked like a perfectly harmonious family reunion. The moment I stepped through the door, the temperature in the room dropped several degrees. The Empress Dowager swept a look at me, full of undisguised disdain. She is the Emperor's biological mother. But she was never Empress, and that has been the greatest regret of her life. After becoming Empress Dowager, her favorite thing to do was to fall ill every few days. just so Empress Xiao would voluntarily come and attend her sickbed. Then she'd use every possible means to torment her, running her ragged and keeping her awake for nights on end. After more than 3 years of this, the illness was finally attended right into Empress Xiaoxian's own body. She died the year before I entered the palace, just past 20 years old. And from that point on, the Empress Dowager's back no longer ached, her legs no longer hurt. Reinvigorated, she began searching for her next victim. To this day, the position of Empress remains vacant. The reason is simple. Who the Empress Dowager favors, the Emperor doesn't. And who the Emperor favors, the Empress Dowager doesn't. The latter, of course, refers to me, the fox spirit. But I truly have no interest in that position. There are far too many things a virtuous empress cannot do, while a favored consort can let herself go. Like right now. Faced with the Empress Dowager's passive-aggressive complaints about feeling tightness in her chest early in the morning, I sat calmly in my chair and, with utmost sincerity and concern, advised her to drink more warm water. Pan Zhaoyi, seated beside me, let out a soft laugh. Empress Xiaoxian had been her childhood best friend. 7 o'clock. Clock out on time from Shokong Palace. Consort phone, and I shared part of the route back. I smiled sweetly and praised the white jade bracelet on her wrist as exceptionally beautiful. Consort Feng's smile was painfully awkward. 7:30. Breakfast with the Emperor after court. When the Emperor entered, his expression was somewhat gloomy. Presumably, he'd been thoroughly roasted by the officials over the matter of building a summer retreat palace in Wuzhou. Leaving aside the cost, the idea itself made no sense. Wuzhou is even hotter than the capital in summer. What kind of summer retreat would that be? Su Kairan had only just gained favor for a few days and already didn't know her own limits, daring to reach this far. Why didn't anyone advise that Prefect Su of Wuzhou back then to educate his daughter properly before sending her into the palace? I massaged the Emperor's shoulders and picked up a couple of bites of food for him. His expression visibly brightened. When I reached a dish of shredded loofah with peach kernels, I paused, then instructed a palace maid to send a plate of it to Su Kairan as well. Last night, just halfway through dinner, a young eunuch from Su Kairan's palace came running over, saying she'd come down with heatstroke again and asking the Emperor to go check on her. The Emperor hesitated and glanced at me several times. I told him to go, so he did, although she ultimately failed to keep the Emperor overnight. Su Kairan's look toward me during morning greetings to the Empress Dowager today carried a bit more smugness than before. Su Kairan hasn't been feeling well these past few days. This dish is just right for relieving summer heat, I said, my tone perfectly virtuous and gracious. The Emperor set his bowl down on the table with a loud bang. And just like that, Su Kairan was sent to the cold palace to cool off. 8:15. A walk after breakfast to aid digestion. The Emperor went to the imperial study to review memorials and wanted me to come along to grinding for him. I refused on the grounds that my waist was sore and even gave him a light tap with my pink little fist. After being tapped, he left in a very good mood. Hopefully, when Prince Zhongyong is waiting in the imperial study to tear into him, he can keep that same cheerful attitude. Prince Zhongyong is 91 this year. He is the sworn brother of the Emperor's great-grandfather and the foremost founding hero of the dynasty. Last month, he twisted his foot while practicing martial arts early in the morning, so he hadn't been attending court these days. But since today's court session ended in an uproar, even leaning on a cane, he was bound to enter the palace. There was no way I was going to the imperial study to watch that show. To be fair, since ascending the throne, the Emperor has done a pretty decent job. The number of times he gets scolded has dropped by an entire order of magnitude compared to his father. The most dramatic incident was the year Empress Xiaoxian passed away. Prince Zhongyong held up the golden cudgel bestowed by Emperor Taizu himself and tried to storm into the inner palace to discipline the Empress Dowager. The Emperor stopped him with everything he had. It's said the Emperor hadn't cried that hard since he was 3 years old. As for this whole summer palace project, its root cause was Su Kairan gaining favor. And the reason Su Kairan gained favor was that she bears a 30% resemblance to Empress Xiaoxian. with deliberate makeup and styling that can be boosted to about 50%. How should I put it? This is just a classic case of a scumbag man being deeply moved by his own emotions. Go get him, Prince Zhongyong. 8:27. Writing a letter to my father. Just casually. Aside from my father himself, who won't read it, everyone else who handles this letter, including many people who really shouldn't be handling it at all, will read it over and over again, and then overinterpret it using all kinds of bizarre mental gymnastics, to the point where they can extrapolate from. Had sweet steamed milk curd this morning. 2. Using dairy from border tribes to collude with foreign powers and plot treason. 8:41. Writing another letter to my father. Very carefully. This one will be read by him alone, though it contains no thoughts of overthrowing the dynasty either. 9:19. Meeting Consort and Princess Rugia. Rugia seems to have caught a bit of a summer cold. She coughed twice when paying respects to the Empress Dowager this morning. The Empress Dowager immediately covered her nose with a handkerchief and didn't let her come close. I reached out to hug her, but Rugia lowered her head timidly, murmuring that she might pass her illness on to me. I smiled, pulled her into my arms, and kissed her on the cheek. The little girl let out a very soft sob and wrapped her slender arms around my neck. I patted her head and had someone bring her a bowl of fritillaria and pear syrup to drink. She is the only child in the entire harem. No phrase like cherished pearl in the palm or heaven-favored daughter would be an exaggeration. That she could be raised like this. The only explanation is that Consort is truly an oddity. Back then, she was merely a Baolan of the crown prince. The deposed Consort Xiao had been a Liang Yuan and Pan Zhaoyi a Liangdi, all ranked above her. She became consort solely because she gave birth to Rugia. Yet she still wasn't satisfied, focusing all her efforts on currying favor, paying little attention to her daughter. She even often complained in front of Rugia about why she hadn't been born a boy. Presumably, she thought that with a son, she could become empress. She was seriously overthinking it. Earlier I mentioned that the empress's seat is vacant because the one the Empress Dowager favors, the emperor doesn't, and the one the emperor favors, the Empress Dowager doesn't. As for Consort she belongs to the category that neither the emperor nor the Empress Dowager favors. And it's very hard to feel any sympathy for her. For example, today she came specifically to congratulate me over Su Xiren's downfall, saying that it was immensely satisfying to see a fox spirit who bewitched the ruler fall out of favor. As the biggest fox spirit in the harem, I have every reason to believe she was throwing shade at me. But she really wasn't. Don't overanalyze the thought process of an oddball. She's simply thick-headed. 10:03. Meng Qiren requested an audience and was refused by me. She entered the palace at the same time as Su Qiren, but seems to be a low-profile control group. Originally, this palace appointment should have gone to her elder sister, the legitimate daughter of the Vice Minister of Revenue. But that Miss Meng suddenly fell ill with a strange disease, leaving scars on her face and body. The Vice Minister's household turned completely upside down over it. 2 of his beloved concubines died. More than a dozen maidservants were sold off. And 3 other daughters by concubines were sent away to rural estates. Chaos aside, an opportunity like sending a daughter into the palace was something they absolutely could not afford to miss. After all, who would refuse the chance to become the emperor's father-in-law? So although the minister's wife was extremely unwilling, she ultimately pinched her nose, gritted her teeth, and chose for a long time, before picking out the most obedient, well-behaved concubine-born daughter, the one who had always clung to her legitimate mother with the utmost respect and devotion, and officially registered her under her own name. The emperor had originally been very dissatisfied with the Vice Minister of Revenue, but Meng Qiren's downcast, compliant, plain little white flower appearance was something the palace didn't yet have. Out of a sort of collector's mentality, he kept her, and the little white flower continued along her old path of obedience and restraint. From morning till night, she sat at her embroidery frame, working diligently, and everything she made, She didn't give to the emperor, she gave to me. Whenever she had nothing to do, she'd carry a bundle of embroidery to Yahua Palace to pay her respects and exchange pleasantries, making her loyalty and clinging to my coattails abundantly clear. But for now, I'm still quite satisfied with my own looks, and have no plans to disfigure myself anytime soon. 10:45. I head to the small kitchen of Yahua Palace. Just now, a eunuch reported that the imperial study received 1 serving each of lily and silverear porridge, red date lotus seed soup, and ginseng chicken soup this morning. The emperor didn't even lift a bowl lid. I genuinely don't understand. Is there some law that says you'll be breaking the rules if you send the emperor anything other than soup? And besides, the emperor was just verbally shredded by Prince Zhongyong today. He was already full of pent-up anger if he drank a bellyful of water on top of that. TSK Piske. I had the small kitchen prepare a few dishes, some sour, some spicy, all with bold flavors. The staple was cold noodles tossed with 3 shredded ingredients. I added a bit of water while they were kneading the dough, so this meal counts as being made by me personally. 11:20. Arranging for the face powder to be divided up. To be honest, some of the concubines really didn't need to be that angry. There were only 10 boxes of the original powder to begin with. Even if the emperor hadn't given all of them to me, it still wouldn't have been their turn. But unlike the emperor, I believe in sharing the favor evenly. I had the palace maids decant the powder into small porcelain bottles fired in the shape of jade hairpin flowers. Then we sent some to every palace according to rank. Let them curse that shameless fox spirit for deliberately disgusting them, while holding their noses and patting the powder onto their faces. After all, it costs 5,000 taels of silver per box. And this trash product really is whiter than they are. Oh, and it smells nice too. I hope the emperor enjoys kissing it. 11:55. I tie an apron on over my clothes, and when the emperor comes in, I pretend I'm just in the middle of taking it off. 12 o'clock. Lunch with the emperor, made by my own hands. The emperor kept his head down and ate 3 small bowls of the mixed noodles. From the plate of peppercorn spicy shredded chicken, not even a single bit of chili was left. He stared at the bowls and plates on the table for a while, then slowly sighed. Half as if asking me, half as if talking to himself, he wondered aloud whether he really counted as a good emperor. Anyone who can say something like that is usually a pretty decent ruler. Take the construction of the summer palace, for instance. After being criticized, instead of flying into a rage, he was able to recognize his mistake in time. For a young emperor in his 20s, that's genuinely rare. From the perspective of the people and the officials, he's unquestionably qualified. But from the perspective of a husband, he's a certified, genuine scumbag. That said, I'm just a lowly noble consort. How could I possibly have the nerve to call myself his wife? The emperor is merely my boss. Whether he's a scumbag or not has nothing to do with me. So, as a model employee, I responded very professionally with actions. I gave him a warm, gentle, deeply considerate hug. This resulted in him still not letting go of my hand, even after lying down on the bed to take his afternoon nap. 12:52. Reading. I've never been what you'd call a talented woman. When I was 10, I once wrote a poem. Goose, goose, goose. Stew the goose in an iron pot. Hot water to pluck the feathers. High heat for the red feet. It simultaneously represented the peak of my poetic and culinary achievements. So what I read are popular folk tales and urban legends. Mostly things written by sour, pedantic scholars to satisfy their own fantasies. Like the prime minister's daughter falling in love with a street beggar. A 1,000-year-old female ghost falling for a down-and-out scholar. A celestial fairy falling for a mortal farmer. Every single one of them could serve as a cautionary anti-guide to women choosing partners. The emperor often reads them with me, and gets even more invested than I do. It's hard to imagine that he once shared refined moments with Empress Xiao, reciting poetry among flowers and painting by the window. Maybe this is what people mean by, you become like the company you keep. A few days ago, we read a popular new bestseller together. When we reached the part where the heroine cuts out her inner core to save the hero, then turns back into a fox, looking over her shoulder step by step as she disappears into the vast mountains. The emperor sighed deeply, full of emotion. I predicted that his next move would be to imagine whether I would sacrifice myself to save him if I were the heroine. So I struck first, flipped the script, twisted my waist, and fell into his arms. While drawing circles on his chest with my index finger, eyes brimming with tears, I asked, after losing my inner core and turning back into a fox, would I still be allowed to stay by his side, even if I could only watch him from afar? The emperor was successfully led off course. He grabbed the hand that was drawing circles and kissed it, declaring that no matter what I turned into, I would always be his beloved little treasure, his precious sweetheart. No help for it, I didn't want to answer that question head-on. The heroine who belongs to the emperor, the one willing to give everything for him, has already returned to the mountains. This fox spirit here is holding a supporting role script, and to many people, I'm probably the evil final boss. Expecting me to save someone is setting the bar a bit too high. 1400 hours. The emperor wakes from his nap, fully recharged. Before he woke up, I'd already gone back to sit by his side. I put my withdrawn hand back into his. It looked as though I'd worked very hard, keeping him company by the bedside all noon. He was deeply moved. Originally, he had promised to accompany his dear mother to listen to opera today. But now the emperor was brimming with energy, and enthusiastically planned to ditch the empress dowager and take me strolling through the gardens instead. Truly a master at manufacturing mother-son conflict. After my firm opposition, he finally went to Shokong Palace after all. He'll probably lavish praise on my filial devotion in front of the empress dowager, clogging her heart up even more.
Ha!
Someone who's truly filial, like Empress Xiao, would go with him to accompany the empress dowager to the opera. But I have no desire to stand under the blazing sun for a full hour without even a cup of tea. 1413. Eating fruit. White jade plums from Xiaozhou. 3 days ago, the emperor presented 2 baskets to Shokong Palace as an act of filial piety. 1 basket was sent to my Yahua Palace, and 1 was kept in the imperial study. A few were taken from it and bestowed on Su Kairan. No idea whether she managed to finish them before being sent to the cold palace. I had no intention of distributing these to the other palaces the way I did with the jade hairpin powder, because I've loved eating plums since I was little. When I was 15, I was swinging on a swing with one hand, happily gnawing on a big plum with the other. And at the highest point of the swing, I casually tossed the plum pit away. It just so happened to hit the emperor on the head. If I weren't good-looking, this would be a horror story. But I am very good-looking. So it turned into a love story. Of course, for many people in the harem, this may still count as a horror story. But no matter what, it's a highly educational tale. Don't litter casually, you will get your karma. 1432. Playing chess with Pan Zhaoyi. Her chess skills are terrible. Mine are even worse, which makes us perfectly matched, trading moves back and forth. Smiling, she picked up a white piece and placed it on the board. She said that back when they were in the crown prince's residence. She always pestered Empress Xiao, then still the crown princess, to give her a 9-stone handicap. After she got pregnant, her temper became even more finicky. She'd even taken back moves and flipped the table. Empress Xiao never got angry, and would coax her with sour candied apricots and preserved plums. In Pan Zhaoyi's sleeping hall, there hangs 100 suns welcoming blessings painting, personally painted by Empress Xiao and given to her as a gift. Her favorite figure in it is the one wearing a bright red padded jacket and riding a bamboo hobby horse. She would often stroke her belly, hoping her child would grow up just like that, fair, plump, and blessed. Later, the child was gone. And later still, Empress Xiao was gone too. She was still smiling, but tears fell from her eyes, landing on the pale blue front of her robe. I said nothing and gently patted her shoulder. That radiant, coquettish, innocent, and willful Pan Liangdi, who loved wearing crimson and pink, who was like a blooming peony,
Was gone as well.
I never even got the chance to meet her. 1547. Making a scented sachet. The emperor has said repeatedly that he wants me to make one for him. I wanted to embroider a dragon on it. He insisted on a pair of mandarin ducks. I'm not unfamiliar with needlework. My mother passed away early. When my father's or my brother's clothes tore, I was the one who mended them. But my skill level tops out at sewing a crooked, lopsided centipede. Anyway, neither of us is particularly picky, considering that turning mandarin ducks into hens wouldn't be much of a stretch, while turning a dragon into a gecko would risk committing high treason. I reluctantly nodded in agreement. That said, I only agreed to embroider it. I never said when it would be finished. When asked, the answer is always, fine work takes time. At present, there's only an indistinct green shape on the sachet. Originally, I meant to embroider the tuft of feathers on top of the head. But I accidentally made it too large, so let's just say it's a lotus leaf. 1626. Changing clothes and heading to Shokong Palace to watch a fashion show. With the emperor present today, the concubines coming to pay their respects. We're bound to rack their brains to outdo one another. Based on various objective conditions, their aesthetic choices can be divided into two schools. The first is the luxury school, represented by Zheng Chongyuan, which emphasizes clothing and jewelry, highlighting one key word: expensive. Zheng Chongyuan's father currently serves as the Salt and Iron Transport Commissioner, one of the single fattest, most lucrative posts there is. Back when Miss Zheng was still unmarried, she changed into 3 new outfits every day. The morning one had embroidered flowers, still beaded with dew. The evening one had butterflies settling on it. If she noticed even the slightest scratch on a pearl in her hairpin, she'd reward the entire set of head ornaments to a maid. After entering the palace, silver from the Zheng family flowed into it like running water. From the empress dowager at the top to the palace maids and eunuchs at the bottom, everyone was taken care of thoroughly. I only hope that when the Zheng family is confiscated one day, she won't cry too loudly. After all, in the emperor's eyes, that money is already his. The second is the aura school, which emphasizes one word: elegance. It's relatively inclusive. Everyone is keen on crafting a unique personal image. Beyond clothing, personality matters even more. For example, being frail and sickly to inspire pity, or being cold and aloof, unforgettable at first sight. The most successful example was the former consort Xiao, serene and detached, free of worldly desires. She sounded faintly ethereal the moment she spoke. The emperor was completely taken in by this act. The less she fought for favor, the more he doted on her. With additional instigation from consort Xiao's maternal aunt, the empress dowager, she very nearly became the dynasty's first imperial noble consort. Unfortunately, the truth came out. She had harmed Pan Zhaoyi's child and tampered with Empress Xiaoxian's medicine. Li Shirong once made a serious effort to copy consort Xiao's air of detachment and achieved a certain degree of success. Unfortunately, she only imitated the surface-level aloofness, without grasping the ruthless cruelty at its core. So, she kept being detached until she detached herself right out of the emperor's heart. As a result, her persona has now shifted to that of a considerate daughter-in-law, focusing all her efforts on winning over the empress dowager. Before I entered the palace, the struggle between these two factions was extremely fierce. Either the east wind overpowered the west, or the west wind overpowered the east. But now, they're all at a disadvantage. Because my style is different from theirs. I get by on my face alone. 1700 hours. An utterly unsurprising visual victory. The emperor asked me to stay and accompany the empress dowager for dinner. The empress dowager told me to leave quickly. 1703. Successfully clocking out early. Thanks to having provoked the empress dowager a bit this morning. Otherwise, she might not have chased me out so directly. When I bowed and took my leave, the emperor looked at me with evident concern. For a moment, I even thought he might speak up and defy the empress dowager, insisting that I stay. But in the end, he kept silent, just as he had countless times with Empress Xiaoxian. Even when Empress Xiaoxian was on her deathbed, he was delayed by the Empress Dowager's unreasonable obstruction over the matter of ordering Consort Shu's execution, and failed to reach her side at the first moment. Pan Zhaoyi once told me that her sister Wen Hui had given her heart to the wrong person in this life, loving someone who didn't love her and wasn't worth her love. In truth, the emperor did love. He simply also loved Consort Shu, loved Pan Zhaoyi, loved Li Xiurong, loved Su Kairan. Because the person he has always loved most is himself. How fitting. The person I love most is also myself. So please, Your Majesty, keep this persona forever. Otherwise, I'd be in a very awkward position. 1746. Invited Wei Zhaoyuan and Lu Jiyu for tea. Both are daughters of military families, with average looks, personalities, and talents. Their rise to high-ranking concubines had little to do with them personally. What the emperor really valued were their fathers and brothers. That sounded a bit ambiguous. Once they entered the palace, they formed their own little faction. No one tried to curry favor with them, and they didn't curry favor with anyone. They lived like invisible people. Today was the first time they set foot in my Yahua palace. Sitting stiff-faced in chairs, backs straight as arrows, their hands holding the tea bowls slightly trembling. I didn't bother with small talk, and went straight to asking their purpose for coming. The two glanced at each other, lost control of their composure, and simultaneously knelt before me. Lu Jiyu's family, seeing no hope for their eldest daughter, planned to send the younger one to the palace. But the younger daughter already had a sweetheart. The man in question was Wei Zhaoyuan's brother. I had known about this for a long time. And I also knew Lu's family had this idea because the little Miss Lu resembled me by about 20%. It's an honor for this noble consort to have knockoffs. By the way, Wei Zhaoyuan's brother isn't as handsome as the emperor. But the Wei family is strict. One can only take a concubine after 40, if childless. Lady Wei is also very kind, with no penchant for tormenting her daughter-in-law. The accuracy of this information is 100%. My father personally investigated it repeatedly back then, though it ultimately went unused. However, it did catch me off guard that Wei Zhaoyuan and Lu Jiyu came to petition me over this. They aren't afraid of me, a fox spirit, holding the leverage of their future palace marriage. One day, if displeased, couldn't I wipe out both the Wei and Lu families in one swoop? I know General Xiao is a good person, and the consort is also a good person. Wei Zhaoyuan bit her lip. That year I followed my father and brother to the frontier and saw you, consort, demonstrating your spear skills with the soldiers. Later, when I rode a horse and my stirrup slipped, it was you who risked yourself to save me. She still remembered. I had almost forgotten. I, too, was once the daughter of a military household, even called young General Xiao at one point. My brother once agonized over it. He asked my father why everyone called me young general but called him eldest son. My father chased him around the courtyard 8 times with a wolf-tooth club, roaring, "You little brat, you can't even beat your sister and yet have the nerve to ask?" After that, the whole general business faded away. Once the emperor favored me, and I became a noble consort. My father promptly relinquished all military command and returned to the capital as Duke Gongua. A few third- or fourth-rank military daughters entering the palace could balance civil and military power. But the daughter of a first-rank grand marshal entering the palace only risks empowering the in-laws excessively. My father truly is a loyal minister. Otherwise, I might have just become a demon consort, wreaking havoc on the state to my heart's content. For the sake of saying they're good people, I lifted both of them up, one in each hand. Being good really isn't that hard. Jiyu, as a third-rank consort, can summon family if ill. But if an outsider enters the palace, she must pay respects to the Empress Dowager. If the Empress Dowager still lets little Miss Lu in after seeing her face, I'll stab my own eyes outside Shokong Palace in repentance. I am extremely confident in the hatred points this face has accumulated with the Empress Dowager. 1809. A eunuch reported some palace gossip from today. The latest comes from the Empress Dowager's dinner table. When Zheng Chongyuan served soup to the Empress Dowager, her hand slipped, spilling a few drops. The emperor muttered, "Fool at her. Cue a candle for the already clearly counting down Zheng family." The Empress Dowager, initially about to get angry, stopped upon seeing the emperor's reaction. Instead, she defended Zheng Chongyuan, praising her filial devotion. She acts like she's never angry. But as soon as she sees the emperor and Empress Xiaoxian in marital harmony, she must find a reason to criticize Empress Xiaoxian as unfilial. Such character. Such intellect. A person who could survive in the late emperor's harem for over a decade, bearing a son, purely on looks. The royal gene for judging by appearance is indeed hereditary. Though the emperor himself is commendable, he inherited his mother's looks with precision. Otherwise, Empress Xiaodu would never have adopted him at her knees and married her own niece to him as crown princess. From the moment she received the crown princess's official seals, Empress Xiaoxian's life was fated to be a tragedy. 1830. A rare solo dinner. When the emperor isn't around, I can just pick up a chicken wing with my hands and eat. Happiness. 1835. The emperor arrived. Happy moments are always short-lived. Aside from tormenting her daughters-in-law, the Empress Dowager's greatest joy is watching her son eat. The more he eats, the more fragrant and delicious it seems, the happier she becomes. But the moment a consort becomes Empress Dowager, any body shape anxiety disappears entirely. So the dishes on the Shokong Palace table are prepared exactly to her taste, sweet and oily. Even the tea is honey-saturated, enough to make any bee's life miserable. Back when Empress Xiaoxian worried about the dowager's health, she also fretted over the emperor being force-fed like a goose. She offered gentle counsel several times, only to be scolded harshly by the dowager. On one occasion, the dowager got carried away and declared she was going to the imperial ancestral temple to cry for the late emperor. She complained that even a bite of decent food was impossible under her daughter-in-law's watch. This forced Empress Xiaoxian to remove her hairpin and kneel outside Shokong Palace for a full day and night in punishment. I would so love for her to make that demand again. The loyal and brave general cannot enter the inner palace, but he can go to the temple. Today, the emperor entered with a hand over his stomach. I poured him a cup of digestion tea, then continued my meal. Honestly, I should have been more professional. Softly leaning against him, using my fragrant little hands to massage him. But in the afternoon, I recalled some old stories of young General Xiao. I feared I wouldn't transition roles properly, and my hands might be too forceful, sending him running to vomit. The emperor sipped from his cup, then stood and paced a bit in the room. Suddenly, he swept me up into his arms from behind. Seems my role-playing was effective. Otherwise, there would have been a suplex here. He sighed tiredly in my ear, saying he knew I had been wronged by the Empress Dowager. If I had stayed there to eat with her, that would have been true injustice. Who cares to stand beside the Dowager with a pair of long, heavy silver chopsticks, serving her dishes? The day I received the decree making me noble consort, my brother whispered to me behind our father's back, "Don't wrong yourself. If you don't want to enter the palace, don't. I'll take you to wander the world." I know he had said that thousands of times in his heart, but the intended listener wasn't me. It was for the 5-year-old prodigy, able to write poetry at 5 and prose at 7. The most talented young lady in the capital, Xia Wenhui, granddaughter of the former left prime minister. I was 10 that year, the first and last time I attended a gathering of noble girls in the capital. I wrote a masterpiece, Ode to a Goose, which became the biggest joke of the banquet. Only the Xia family's beautiful, gentle eldest sister didn't laugh. She said my poem was plain-spoken and very amusing. She invited me to sit beside her and even served me some blushed goose breast. The crowd quieted down. At that time, Xia Wenhui had already been pre-selected as crown princess. When the gathering ended, she held my hand and walked me out, gently advising me not to care about what others said. Go home and sleep well.
Tomorrow morning be happy, she said.
She added that a Miss Pan was sick and couldn't attend today. Next time she'd introduce us, They would surely get along. I've always had thick skin, so I wasn't embarrassed. But her hand was warm, her voice was pleasant. I wanted her to coax me a little longer. I didn't let go until I saw my brother holding the horse outside. Then I mounted cleanly and swiftly. She smiled slightly and lowered the curtain of her jade and pearl 8 treasure carriage. If time could rewind, I know my brother would return to that day, telling Xia Wenhui he loved her. He could have taken her to wander the world if she wished. But I also know she wouldn't have wanted that. Because Xia Wenhui loved the emperor, not as crown princess or empress, but as a woman loves a man. Like a flower loves another flower. Like a bird loves another bird. Because of love, one willingly endures, compromises, sacrifices everything for him. But the emperor's love for her was like a vase to a flower, a tree to a bird. She was wonderful, but never the only one. And I am not the only one either. But my type is unique. I am a vicious woodpecker. Before entering the palace, I told my brother, "This life, I will never allow myself a single grievance. Every day, I will live happily, reassuring those who treat me well, and vexing those who dislike me. As for the emperor, when he grows a heart, we'll see. Life passes like a white colt flashing by. Why not seize the moment?
Like now."
His guilt is mine to exploit." So I lowered my head slightly, twirling my sash with my fingers, softly murmuring that it doesn't matter what happens to me, as long as mother and son are at peace. From this angle, the emperor could see the faint redness at the corners of my eyes, and the glimmer of moisture within. He gripped my arm and tightened suddenly. I let out a perfectly timed, soft ding. The emperor could no longer contain himself. He bit my earlobe, then scooped me up horizontally. "You deceitful little fox, I shall properly make it up to you," he declared. The emperor's time is not wasted either. After all, the face and figure are quite commendable. Around 2000 hours. Bath time. Just as I started washing, the emperor squeezed into my tub. Around 2100 hours. I thought I should take another bath. The emperor wouldn't let go. 2209. Finally, bedtime. Tomorrow morning will be another joyful day. I wonder if the emperor will wake up grumpy.